On July 30th, 1945, the U.S. cruise ship USS Indianapolis was hit by 2 torpedoes by a Japanese submarine. Of those survivors, only a fraction of them who lived through the sinking would actually live to tell the tale by the end of the ordeal. Launched in 1931 and used by the Navy the very next year, the U.S. carrier USS Indianapolis hosted many visits from the U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt prior to the war. When the Japanese carried out the December 1941 Pearl Harbor attacks, the Indianapolis spent months at sea looking for the perpetrators, even surviving a kamikaze attack. The Indianapolis also participated in the bombing attacks on Iwo Jima. Prior to its sinking, the USS Indianapolis was involved in a top-secret mission delivering parts for the bomb that would be dropped on Hiroshima, thus brutally ending Japan's involvement in the war. On July 30th, 1945, the USS Indianapolis was heading for a training exercise from Guam to Leyte with about 1,200 sailors aboard. On July 31st, 1945, the USS Indianapolis was cautiously traveling through the Pacific Ocean due to limited visibility when it was struck shortly after midnight by a Japanese submarine. As the ship listed on its side, communications broke down. While some sailors tried to save the ship, others tried to save themselves. After 12 minutes, though, the ship flipped over and disappeared beneath the waves, leaving over 900 men stranded in the open ocean with nothing but the clothes on their back or whatever they could find floating in the ocean from the sinking ship. After 5 days of being on the open ocean with no food or water, any hopes for a swift rescue quickly faded. Nights gave way to day, and day gave way to nights, while the sailors were out on the open ocean with nothing but miles of ocean ahead. There was no protection from the blazing sun during the day or the freezing cold at night, and the open ocean only contained salt water. Most of the soldiers could only find tinned meat or salt and crackers. Drinkable water was simply unavailable. As the days passed, some men succumbed to dehydration while others hallucinated that they saw islands in the distance swimming off never to be seen again. As the long wait for salvation continued, the men were not alone in the water. Sharks began feeding on the dead and injured, picking them off one by one. One survivor, Lowell Dean Cox, gave his account of seeing sharks in the water. "We were losing 3 or 4 each night and day. You were constantly in fear because you'd see them all the time. Every few minutes you'd see their fins, 12 to 24 fins in the water. They would come up and bump you. I was bumped a few times. You never know when they're going to attack you. In that clear water you could see the sharks circling. Then, every now and then, like lightning, one would come straight up and take a sailor and take him straight down. One came up and took the sailor next to me." The situation was getting worse and worse with each passing hour. 2 days passed, then 3. Their luck didn't change until on the 4th day. As it turns out, their luck would change. A routine patrol flight on a mission located several men in the water and immediately threw out some of its life jackets and radioed back in and dispatched every vessel in the area. First to arrive on the scene was another aircraft with Lieutenant Colonel Robert Adrian Marks, who risked his own life by attempting a water landing, rescuing 56 of the sailors, even allowing some of them to rest on the wings of the plane until help arrived. Before long, the Cecil J. Doyle and 6 other ships arrived on scene to complete the rescue mission, effectively ending their ordeal. Of the 900 or so sailors that went into the water, only 316 survived in the end. Even though distress calls were made from the USS Indianapolis between the few minutes of it being hit and its sinking, they were not answered because on the receiving end, the dispatcher was later found to be drunk. When the USS Indianapolis never arrived at its intended destination of Leyte, alarm bells were ringing. However, the ship's massive size and the monitoring of ships at that time was designed for smaller ships, so it was ignored. The ship's captain, Charles McVay, was later charged with not guiding the ship in a zigzag pattern, which was standard during those times. This would have deterred the ship from being hit, or at least made it less of a target from submarine attack. Later, McVay was court-martialed and lived out the rest of his life in shame, later taking his life in 1967. This was distressing news to his crew, which did not blame Captain McVay for the tragedy. After all, he had not been warned of submarine activity and had been denied a request to have a destroyer escort the Indianapolis earlier. As far as some of the survivors were concerned, Captain McVay was a scapegoat for the failures of others. It wasn't until 1996 that a 6th grade student named Hunter Scott actually enlisted the assistance of some of the survivors and others and posthumously got Captain McVay exonerated. In closing, the Guinness Book of World Records has this listed as one of the worst shark attacks en masse in human history. Let's remember those who have fallen, and please like, share, and subscribe. God bless.